Welcome to With Love from Karen, all things baked edition, okay? We are going to make a cheesecake today. I finally found a recipe that I particularly like, and personally I was going for a light cheesecake. Typically when I eat cheesecake at like a restaurant, it's really heavy. You know, I may have to take a sip of water after a bite or two. So I kind of just made cheesecake how I like it, and other people like it too. So here we go. I personally do prefer a baked cheesecake, and for that to be a success, at least in my opinion, it needs a water bath. So whether you are using a circle pan or a square pan, you want to get a bigger size from whatever you're baking in, and it needs to be equal around the pan that the cheesecake is going in. So if you're using a 6-inch circle square to bake the cheesecake in, then you want like an 8 or a 10-inch circle pan to put the water in, okay? So I'm gonna put this aside because this is just gonna be for the water. This is the pan that I'm actually gonna bake the cheesecake in. The recipe that you'll see, or you know, what I'm using is actually half of my actual cheesecake recipe. So this is just for a small personal, you know, cheesecake for a person. So I'm gonna cut my recipe in half, okay? So typically I would use this pan to bake the cheesecake in, and then I would use my 10-inch as a water bath, okay? So again, this is the 6-inch. So I'm gonna spray it with Baker's Joy. This is like liquid gold in a can. And then parchment paper. I'm going to put I know it's hard for you to see. So I'm gonna put the parchment paper against the cheesecake to just get an estimate of the width. And thankfully these have lines on it. So I'm gonna cut at the width of the pan, and I probably could cut it. So okay, I'm gonna do it again. So I'm going to spray the parchment paper here so this can stick to it. Okay, so this is typically how my pan for cheesecake would look. I let the parchment paper be this long, so when it's done, I can just lift it out the pan. Because I've tried using the springform pans, and I just don't like it. I don't see the point. I mean, you have to put foil underneath so the water doesn't get through. And then, I don't know, I didn't like that. So this is what I came up with. So to this, in this bag, I have crushed graham crackers as well as shortbread cookies. Because that's another thing that I found. I mean, I know graham cracker is the go-to cookie. That's what everybody uses. But just to be different and give my cheesecakes a unique sort of taste, you know, a signature taste, I just kind of mixed it in with the shortbread. So it's an equal amount. I mean, doesn't matter, but crush it up with butter. And I don't necessarily measure. I just kind of go with what it feels like. And this has already been crushed with butter, because I typically do that ahead of time because I don't measure the butter either. So, but I'm just crushing up the big pieces of cookie because some are big. So pressing it down. gonna bake this. The oven is at 350, but we're gonna turn it down once the cheesecake actually goes in. But we're gonna bake this for like 5 to 7 minutes. Okay, so we baked our crust 5 to 7 minutes. It's obviously hot, and we don't want to put the cheesecake right on top of this, put the batter right on top of this. So this needs to cool, okay? So I'm gonna put it in the fridge with this towel underneath it for probably another 10 minutes. Okay, so now we have our crust cooling off in the fridge. We're gonna start with the cheesecake batter. So I have 1 pack of cream cheese. And I don't believe in waste, so yes, I'm gonna scrape this off and use it in the batter. Okay, now the important thing to remember is when baking, everything needs to be room temperature for the most part. I'm trying to think of any situation where that wouldn't be true. Can't think of any, but this particular recipe, everything has been sitting out for 2 days. Cream cheese, sour cream, heavy cream, and an egg has been sitting out for 2 days. It's important. Everything will not mix well. It won't be smooth. It'll be lumpy. It makes for a great cheesecake if you follow that step, okay? So that's why it's important to prepare in advance, because not only do you have to leave the ingredients out to become room temperature to get, you know, a little bit warm, but the cheesecake needs to bake. Then you have to put it in the fridge overnight. You know, it's all about preparation, okay? So, cream cheese in the mixer. I add sour cream to my cheesecake. And typically, you know, the sour cream or even like, or even cream cheese sometimes, it'll start to separate, like it's a little liquidy on top. I used to be the one that would like pour the liquid out because it was just, it was gross to me. But now I know from my readings that you actually want to mix it together because it's part of the sour cream. So I'm mixing it together because it was coming apart after sitting out for all that time. So I'm just gonna put it in. And typically I do like a third of a cup of sour cream, but this is all I have left, so I'm gonna use it all. won't harm it or anything. Okay, so we want to cream the sour cream and cream cheese together. Okay, now that the cream cheese and sour cream has come together to be one, I'm going to add in basically the rest of the recipe. So I have about a third of a cup of heavy cream, 1 egg, salt, and vanilla. I'm going to combine them. I typically always crack my eggs open in another container before adding it to whatever I'm baking, just to look at it. Make sure there's no shells, make sure the egg isn't bleeding. I mean, you just never know. So, unless you can see through the shell, I mean, yeah, my grandmother taught me that. So I'm gonna add a pinch of salt and some vanilla. And then I'll whisk this together, because eggs is one thing that can be added to the cream cheese and make it lumpy. So combining it like this and then pouring it in as it mixes is what helps it to be smooth. All of these things I learned just watching different people make cheesecake. Some things I got from one person or one recipe, and then another I got from somewhere else. I just put it all together to my own liking. Okay, that's done. I'm gonna scrape off the paddle just to make sure that everything is combined, because sometimes it can pick up one or the other. the sour cream or the cream cheese. So I want to make sure that it's all combined. Because this isn't like cake batter. Like if a certain part, you know, of the flour or something doesn't mix, then you can just mix it by hand. So. So after the cream cheese and the sour cream have joined together, this step, the second step, would be to add the sugar in. Most, if not all, maybe cheesecake recipes use granulated sugar. I found that I prefer powdered sugar because it's much finer and it's very difficult to cross the line of too much sugar or not enough sugar. So this is just something that I've come to find in my own baking. This is half the recipe that I'm baking again. So here I'm pouring in about 3/4 of a cup, whereas a full recipe would be 1/2 cup. Once the sugar has been combined, then I'll pour in what I mixed in earlier, which was the heavy cream, the egg, the salt, and the vanilla, and let that combine. And the final step that I like to do with my cheesecake is add about a tablespoon or maybe 2 of just all-purpose flour. And I found it just brings the cheesecake together, give it a little structure. Okay, cheesecake is, well, it's not done, but it's done mixing. So I baked the crust at 350 for like 5 to 7 minutes. Then I cut the oven down to 300 degrees and bake this cheesecake for an hour. I've baked it at 350 before, and then even like 200 something. And the middle ground for me is like 300, 275. I would say 300. But I know personally that my stove is very, very hot because I had to even line the bottom rack with foil because my stove is electric. So it's really, really hot. But your middle ground or whatever degrees may be different. If you think 350 is a good temperature to start, then it probably is. So now here is why I said the parchment paper works for me, because again, when it's done baking, I can just lift it out, put it in the fridge, and then that's it. So I see that there are air bubbles. You want to take your boiling water, pour it into the larger pan to surround the cheesecake. Make sure whatever you're pouring from or whatever you boil the water in has a lip. The saucepan I use specific for this because it's easy to pour. If you have a kettle for tea, that would be great too. The oven is set at 300 degrees, so we're going to bake the cheesecake for an hour, then turn the oven off and bake the cheesecake for another hour. Here is the cheesecake straight from the oven after 2 hours of baking. This is the air bubble I took a picture of before. That's why you want to get all the air out as much as possible. This is actually still kind of warm, even though I took it out the oven with my bare hands. It's still a little bit warm. So I'm going to let it sit on the counter like this for a few, then put it in the fridge overnight.